Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. Thank you for joining us. The Secretary of Homeland Security, Kirstjen Nielsen, is leaving the Trump administration after submitting her resignation last night. The unexpected move follows the president's dismay over a surge in migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. Nielsen's tenure was defined by last year's zero-tolerance policy. It led to the separation of thousands of children from their families at the border. Nielsen spoke earlier outside her home, where she thanked the president.
I just want to thank the president again for the tremendous opportunity to serve this country. I'm forever grateful and proud of the men and women of DHS who work so hard every day to execute their missions and to protect the homeland. I really look forward to continuing to support them from the outside. I've spent the last 24 hours since yesterday talking with government officials, with administration officials, members of Congress to ensure a smooth transition. As you know, DHS has a vast array of missions. I want to make sure that we continue to execute them all with excellence through the transition. I share the president's goal of securing the border. I will continue to support all efforts to address the humanitarian and security crisis on the border. And other than that, I'm on my way to keep doing what I can for the next few days. So thank you all for being here.
Kevin McAleenan will take over as acting DHS secretary. He's currently the commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. His employees were responsible for actually separating families at the border. Joining me now from Washington is Yahoo News White House correspondent Hunter Walker. And from the White House is CBS News Washington correspondent Paula Reid. Thanks to both of you for being with us. Paula, let me start with you. You broke the news of Nielsen's departure yesterday. So what more do you now know about what led her to leaving the administration?
Well, we know when Nielsen showed up at the White House yesterday for a 5 p.m. meeting with the president, she did not expect to be fired or forced to resign. She was here to talk with the president about the best next steps to try to implement a lot of this administration's policies. But during the course of this conversation, she was unable to persuade the president that she should stay in the job. Now, the president sort of cryptically suggested this would happen on Friday when he was visiting the border. Once he withdrew his ICE nominee, he said that he wanted to go in a different, tougher direction on the border. And he said not only was he withdrawing his ICE nominee, but there would be more to come. We now know he was likely referring to Nielsen's departure.
And Paula, CBS News reported that senior advisor Stephen Miller has been a driving force behind Nielsen's departure. So does he have other plans to change how DHS operates?
This is part of an overhaul that they want to do with the Department of Homeland Security, shifting its focus, which since 9/11 has been on focusing on Homeland Security, specifically when it comes to terrorism, now sort of shifting it to immigration. This is the philosophy of the Trump administration. Speaking with an official earlier today who confirmed that, yes, the Trump administration believes that immigration, not cyber, not China, not Russia, but immigration is one of the greatest threats to national security. So they do kind of want to reorganize the officials within the Department of Homeland Security to focus more on the border and more on immigration.
And Hunter, then when you couple Nielsen's departure with the fact that the president withdrew his nominee to lead ICE because he wants to go in a, quote, tougher direction, what does that tell you about how this administration plans to treat the issue of immigration?
Well, you know, as we saw in those remarks that she made outside her house, Secretary Nielsen wasn't exactly, an advocate for increased immigration. She, in her own way, was a hardliner. She was the face of this child separation policy. But as Paula was pointing out, by all accounts, Stephen Miller, who really is the ultimate immigration hardliner in the White House, is ascendant. And these changes are being done at the behest of him and the president. So, there are rumblings that we may be seeing more and stepped up child separations. There's word that one of the clashes between President Trump and Secretary Nielsen was over her dissatisfaction with his request to totally shut down the border. So I think it seems pretty clear that we're moving towards a stepped up anti-immigration policy from the president. And I don't think it's any coincidence that that comes as we're heading into the 2020 campaign. This was always one of the big issues that he campaigned on and always been some red meat for his base.
But Hunter, what more do we know about Stephen Miller? He's a somewhat shadowy figure that seems to hold a lot of power behind the scenes.
He came from the office of Jeff Sessions, and outlasted his former boss. He's outlasted so many people in the White House. But you're absolutely right that he's relatively mysterious. Those of us reporters who cover the White House very, very rarely have the opportunity to speak to him. But, you know, from back when he was even in high school, this is a guy who has really enjoyed taking some very dramatic positions in the culture war and also articulating strong opposition to immigration. And I've reported that, you know, one of his top aides in the White House is Julia Hahn, a also sort of mysterious former Breitbart staffer who came in with Steve Bannon, also ended up outlasting him, and, you know, in her career as a writer was really, really staunchly against immigration. So I think amid all this turnover, I mean, Secretary Nielsen, you know, joins a historic amount of officials who've left this White House. These immigration hardliners really have held strong, and you know, their way seems to be the right way for the president.
They seem to be
right
ascendant,
now.
in fact. So, Paula, what more do we know about Kevin McAleenan, and does he have a chance to actually be nominated for the role?
Well, Tanya, he's a longtime border official. Again, a signal that they want to shift the emphasis at the Department of Homeland Security to immigration. But it's not expected that he will ultimately be nominated to succeed Nielsen. The big question here is who can actually be confirmed, because this administration can only have so many acting secretaries. Been a lot of names that have been floated, but right now the person who seems most confirmable is Energy Secretary Rick Perry. But of course, being the acting, that certainly puts you in a good position if Perry or others decline the nomination.
All right. Meanwhile, White House Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney is pushing back on Democrats' requests to the IRS for President Trump's tax returns. Here he is on Fox News Sunday.
To be clear, you believe Democrats will never see the president's tax returns?
Oh, no, never. No, nor should they. Keep in mind that that's an issue that was already litigated during the election. Voters knew the president could have given his tax returns. They knew that he didn't, and they elected him anyway, which, of course, is what drives the Democrats crazy. But they know they're not going to get this. They just want the attention on the issue because they don't want to talk to us about policy.
He's argued that he's under audit and has said that for a couple of years. But even under audit, legally, you could allow people to see your returns.
You could always allow people to see it. That's not what's happening here. The Democrats are demanding that the IRS turn over the documents, and that is not going to happen, and they know it. This is a political stunt by my former colleagues.
So, Paula, clearly this will likely lead to a long legal and political fight. How is the White House preparing?
Well, it's so interesting Mulvaney used the language litigated. This has already been litigated, but he's, of course, referring to the court of public opinion, not the actual federal courts. And what's so interesting is Democrats, in order to make this request, they are relying on this obscure provision of the tax law that requires the IRS to audit the president and vice president every year. And because of that provision, Democrats argue they need to see the president's tax returns to make sure that this law doesn't need to be amended. Now, this is a pretty unprecedented request. This is likely something that will be up to federal courts. But from Mulvaney to say that there's no way they're going to get these, that's definitely an open question. And this request by Democrats, this was carefully vetted, carefully crafted, because they believe this is their greatest, best hope of getting their hands on these tax returns. Now, it's important to note, even if they are able to obtain these, this is not something that would be made public. It would only be available to a handful of officials on a specific committee.
All right. Hunter, next question is for you. The top Republican on the House Judiciary Committee, Georgia Representative Doug Collins, is calling on the Democratic majority to have ex-special counsel Robert Mueller come in and testify. He says that will ensure transparency. So, Hunter, do you think Democrats will go for that?
Well, he sent this really long letter where we saw the beginnings of the contours of the debate that's going to happen between Democrats and Republicans. And some of what Collins said was that, you know, Democrats are asking for these grand jury materials. They're asking for this underlying evidence from the Mueller report. And they can only do that if they begin impeachment proceedings. He says that's, legally the only right they would have to do so. And I've talked to Hakeem Jeffries, one of the top House Democrats, and he says it would be premature to do that right now, but it's not off the table. When it comes to bringing in Special Counsel Mueller, I think what you're seeing is a situation where the Democrats want this underlying evidence. They want to investigate what was in the report. But Republicans are more eager to focus on this idea that you've seen President Trump tweet about so many times, that this was a witch hunt. And, you know, Mueller's procedure, this idea that he had, quote unquote, 12 angry Democrats on his team crafting this report. So both sides are still wrangling over this, but going in completely different directions. elections.
All right, Hunter Walker, thank you so much. Paula, Reid, thank you. It looks like spring has sprung behind you there at the White House. It looks lovely. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.